the breakthrough that shook the galaxy. The observation deck of the Titan Research Complex floated in the cold darkness above Saturn's largest moon. Inside the pressurized dome, Dr. Marcus Rivera stood before a wall of holographic displays, his tired eyes reflecting the dancing data streams that had consumed the last 6 years of his life. His gray-streaked beard and the deep lines around his eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights. But tonight those eyes sparkled with something that had been absent for months: hope. Beside him, Engineer First Class Sarah Okonkwo adjusted the final calculations on her tablet, her fingers moving with practiced precision across the glowing interface. The rest of the team, 37 of Earth's brightest minds in theoretical physics and engineering, watched in tense silence as the countdown continued on the main display. In the vacuum beyond their protective dome, the experimental vessel Pathfinder hung motionless, its sleek silver hull bristling with sensors and experimental field generators. Marcus cleared his throat, and his voice carried across the observation deck with surprising steadiness, considering the weight of the moment. The Pathfinder is ready for phase shift activation. All safety protocols are green. Power core is stable at 98% capacity. The dimensional anchors are holding. This is the moment we've been working toward. 6 years of theory, 3 years of construction, and 14 failed attempts have led us here. Sarah looked up from her tablet and caught his eye. The unspoken question hung between them. What if this time was different? What if humanity was finally about to break free from the prison of slow space travel that had confined them to their own solar system for so long? The countdown reached 30 seconds. Throughout the research complex, alarms began a soft rhythmic pulse. Red lights bathed the corridors in warning, though everyone knew this test had been cleared by every safety board Earth's United Nations could assemble. On the planet far below, billions of people watched live feeds, holding their breath in collective anticipation. Marcus activated his communication link to the Pathfinder's AI pilot. "This is Rivera. You are authorized for phase shift test 715. Execute on my mark." The AI's calm voice responded immediately, acknowledging the command with emotionless efficiency. 10 seconds. The Pathfinder's hull began to shimmer as power flooded into the phase shift generators. The space around the vessel seemed to ripple like water disturbed by an invisible hand. Energy readings spiked across every monitoring station, climbing higher than any previous test had achieved. 5 seconds. The rippling effect intensified, and suddenly the stars beyond the ship began to stretch and distort. It looked as if reality itself was being pulled apart like taffy, creating impossible geometric patterns that hurt to observe directly. 0. The Pathfinder vanished. Not gradually, not with a flash of light or explosion of energy, but simply ceased to exist in normal space. One moment it occupied physical reality. The next it was gone as completely as if it had never been built. For 3 heartbeats, the observation deck remained absolutely silent. Then Sarah's tablet erupted with incoming data. Her eyes widened as she processed the information flooding her systems. "Marcus, we're receiving telemetry from the Pathfinder. It's transmitting from the target coordinates." She looked up, her voice trembling with disbelief. It worked. It actually worked. The ship is in the Alpha Centauri system. 4.3 light years in 7 seconds. The observation deck exploded with cheers and celebrations. Scientists embraced each other, some openly weeping with joy. Marcus felt his knees go weak and gripped the edge of the console for support. They had done it. Humanity had finally cracked faster than light travel using a method that bypassed every limitation that had stumped them for decades. Phase shift drive didn't try to exceed light speed through normal space, which Einstein's equations proved was impossible. Instead, it briefly pushed a vessel into an adjacent dimensional layer where the laws of physics operated differently. The ship would phase out of reality, travel instantaneously to its destination coordinates, and phase back into normal space. It was elegant, revolutionary, and as humanity would soon discover, catastrophically dangerous. 8 minutes later, the Pathfinder returned to Titan's orbit, phasing back into existence with the same reality-bending visual effect. The ship was intact, all systems nominal, and the AI pilot reported 0 complications during the journey. Earth's communication networks lit up with the news. Humanity had joined the ranks of spacefaring civilizations capable of reaching the stars, what no one on Earth noticed in their Celebration was the faint distortion left behind at both the departure and arrival points. Space itself bore almost invisible scars where the dimensional barrier had been breached. These tears were small, measuring only a few meters across, and they were completely undetectable to humanity's current sensor technology. But they were there, and they were growing, 16,000 light-years away, in a station that orbited no star and existed in a carefully maintained pocket of folded space. High Chancellor Draven felt the subsonic alarm before he heard it. The Kralix had evolved in deep ocean trenches where sound traveled faster than light through water, and their technology reflected this heritage. The warning vibration told him something significant had occurred, something that triggered the ancient monitoring systems that watched over this region of the galaxy. Draven was old even by Kralix standards, his translucent body showing the faint luminescence that came with age in his species. His multiple sensory tendrils curled inward in a gesture of concern as he accessed the station's main intelligence system. The holographic display materialized in the water-filled chamber, showing him a three-dimensional map of local space and the energy signature that had triggered the alarm. The pattern was unmistakable and terrifying. Dimensional breach. The signature matched records from 5,000 years ago, from the time of the Zithari collapse. Draven's tendrils went rigid with shock. What species would be foolish enough to attempt dimensional phasing technology? The records were clear. The warnings had been preserved in every galactic archive. This path led only to destruction. He traced the energy signature back to its source, and his concern deepened. The Sol system. The humans. He remembered them now, a young species that had barely achieved fusion power when they first encountered Galactic Unity Council scout ships 30 years ago. They had been classified as a developing civilization, granted protected status, and largely left alone to mature at their own pace. Apparently, they had matured faster than anyone expected, and in the most dangerous direction possible. Draven activated the emergency Zhao Mon's protocol, sending priority alerts to all 52 member species of the Galactic Unity Council. Within hours, representatives would begin arriving at the Central Council Station. Some would come in person, others would attend via quantum-linked avatars, but all would come. A dimensional phasing incident was not a matter for committees or delayed deliberation. This was a threat to the structural integrity of reality itself. On Earth, the celebrations continued for 3 days. The United Nations declared a global holiday. Dr. Marcus Rivera and his team were hailed as heroes who had secured humanity's future among the stars. Plans that had been theoretical for decades suddenly became real possibilities. The colonial expedition to Kepler 442b, a potentially habitable world 600 light-years away, moved from the drawing board to active mission planning. Ambassador Keiko Tanaka, Earth's official representative to the Galactic Unity Council, prepared her presentation about humanity's breakthrough with pride and excitement. In her 20 years of service, she had worked tirelessly to gain recognition for Earth among the galactic community. Now, finally, her species had achieved something that would force the older civilizations to take them seriously. She was in her office at the Earth Embassy Station, rehearsing her speech when the emergency summons arrived. The message was brief and carried maximum priority encryption. Ambassador Tanaka, your immediate presence is required at the Galactic Unity Council Central Station. A matter of extreme urgency regarding recent Earth technological developments requires your testimony. Transportation has been arranged. Please board the provided vessel within 2 hours. Keiko felt a chill run down her spine. The tone was wrong. This wasn't an invitation to celebrate humanity's achievement. This was a summons to answer for a crime she didn't yet understand had been committed. The journey to the Council Central Station took 18 hours, even using the fastest transport the Council could provide. Keiko spent the time reviewing everything she knew about the phase shift drive, trying to anticipate what concerns the Council might raise. Safety protocols had been followed meticulously. The test flights had been conducted in empty space far from any inhabited systems. Environmental impact studies had shown no negative effects. What could possibly be wrong? The council chamber was ancient, built by the architects, a species so old that no one remembered what they had looked like or when they had disappeared. The chamber existed in folded space, larger on the inside than its exterior dimensions suggested, capable of comfortably accommodating beings of wildly different sizes and environmental needs. When Keiko entered, She saw that all 52 member species had sent representatives. The chamber was full and the atmosphere was heavy with tension. High Chancellor Draven floated in his water-filled containment sphere at the center of the chamber. His tendrils moved in slow, deliberate patterns as he addressed the assembled representatives. The human ambassador has arrived. We may now proceed with this emergency session. Ambassador Tanaka, please approach the central platform. Keiko walked forward on legs that suddenly felt unsteady. She had been in this chamber before, but never with this many eyes, sensors, and awareness fields focused solely on her. She took her position on the speaker's platform and waited. Draven's voice carried through the chamber with surprising gentleness. Ambassador Tanaka, 3 days ago your species conducted a test of a faster-than-light propulsion system. We understand you call it the phase shift drive, is this correct? Keiko felt relief wash over her. They simply wanted information. Yes, High Chancellor. Dr. Marcus Rivera and his team successfully tested the drive. We achieved instantaneous travel to Alpha Centauri and back. It represents a major breakthrough for humanity. The Chancellor's tendrils curled inward. A gesture Keiko had learned meant deep concern among his species. Ambassador, I must inform you that your phase shift drive operates by temporarily breaching the dimensional barrier that separates our reality from adjacent quantum layers. Is your species aware of this? Keiko nodded. Yes, that's the basic principle. The ship phases out of our dimension, travels through a layer with different physical constants and phases back. It allows us to bypass the light speed limitation. A murmur ran through the chamber and Keiko heard what sounded like distress calls from several species. The Vrin representative, a crystalline being that communicated through modulated light pulses, began to glow with agitated orange patterns. Draven continued, his voice now carrying a weight that made Keiko's stomach clench with dread. Ambassador, are you familiar with the Zithari collapse? Keiko searched her memory. The Zithari were mentioned in our briefing materials as an extinct civilization, but the files were marked classified. We were told their history was restricted information until Earth achieved full council membership. The Chancellor's form seemed to darken within his sphere. 5,000 years ago, the Zithari were the most advanced species in this galaxy. Their technology exceeded even the architects. They developed dimensional phasing technology similar to what your species has created. They used it for 30 years, establishing an empire that spanned 10,000 star systems. The tiers and dimensional barriers accumulated slowly during that time, invisible to their sensors, growing larger with each journey. He paused, and the chamber fell so silent that Keiko could hear her own heartbeat. Then the cascade began. The accumulated damage reached a critical threshold. Dimensional boundaries collapsed across an entire sector of space. 23 star systems simply ceased to exist in our reality. 800 billion Zithari died instantly. The survivors spent their remaining centuries trying to repair the damage. But dimensional tiers cannot be fully healed once they pass a certain size. The Zithari eventually chose extinction over continuing to risk further damage. Their last act was to seal away their remaining technology and broadcast a warning to all species that might follow them. Keiko felt the blood drain from her face. That can't be right. Our phase shift drive is perfectly safe. We've run thousands of simulations. The dimensional breaches seal themselves immediately after each jump. They appear to seal, Ambassador. But dimensional barriers, once breached, never fully recover their original strength. The damage is cumulative and invisible to conventional sensors. Each jump weakens the fabric of reality a little more. Your species has conducted how many test flights? 17, Keiko whispered. And you have plans to use this technology for colonial expeditions? Yes. 5 colony ships are being prepared for the journey to Kepler 442b. The first launch is scheduled in 6 weeks. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted, made alarm calls, or flashed distress patterns. Draven struck a resonance plate and the deep sound restored order. Ambassador Tanaka, the Galactic Unity Council cannot permit your species to proceed with these launches. The risk is too great. We have learned from the Zithari tragedy. Dimensional phasing technology must not be used, regardless of how elegant or efficient it appears. Keiko felt anger flare hot in her chest. With respect, High Chancellor, Earth is not a full member of the Galactic Unity Council. We've been waiting decades for membership approval. Your laws and restrictions do not apply to us. We've achieved this breakthrough independently, and we have the right to use it. The VRIN representative's light pulsed angry red. Rights are meaningless if you destroy reality itself, human. Your ignorance does not excuse the danger you represent. We're not ignorant, Keiko shot back. We're scientists and engineers who solved a problem that has challenged humanity for centuries. If there's a danger we haven't detected, then share your sensor technology with us. Help us make it safe instead of simply demanding we abandon our greatest achievement. Draven's tendrils moved in complex patterns. Ambassador, you must understand our position. We have access to technology and knowledge accumulated over millions of years. When we tell you something is dangerous, it is not opinion or jealousy. It is fact, proven by the death of civilizations. Then prove it to us, Keiko challenged. Send your scientists to examine our technology. Let us see this accumulated damage you claim exists. But don't ask us to abandon the future of our species based on ancient history and classified information. Humanity has learned to question authority, to verify claims, to demand evidence. It's how we've survived and advanced. The session ended in deadlock. The Council voted to send a scientific delegation to the Sol system to document the dimensional damage and present findings to Earth's leadership. Keiko transmitted a full report to the United Nations, warning them that the Council might attempt to interfere with the colonial missions. On Earth, the news was met with defiance rather than concern. Humanity had spent too long looking up at the stars, dreaming of the day they could walk among them. They had finally achieved that dream through their own ingenuity. No council of aliens, however well-meaning, was going to take that away. Dr. Marcus Rivera received the reports and spent 3 sleepless nights reviewing every scrap of data from the test flights. His instruments showed no anomalies, no dangerous effects, nothing that suggested his drive was tearing holes in reality. Either the Council's concerns were overblown, or humanity's technology simply wasn't sophisticated enough to detect the damage they were causing. Neither option was comforting. As the Council's scientific delegation prepared to depart for Earth, the first dimensional anomaly appeared near Jupiter's orbit. It was small, barely 10 meters across, but it pulsed with energy that made sensors scream warnings across every monitoring station in the solar system. Inside that anomaly, the laws of physics stopped making sense. Time flowed backwards and forwards simultaneously. Matter existed in quantum superposition states that should have been impossible, and very slowly the anomaly began to grow. The crisis had begun, and neither humanity nor the Galactic Unity Council fully understood how bad it was about to become. The price of progress, the New Horizon fleet hung in formation above, Earth like 5 gleaming seeds of humanity's future. Each colony ship measured nearly 2 kilometers in length, carrying 2,000 carefully selected colonists, their families, frozen genetic samples, terraforming equipment, and everything needed to establish permanent settlements on Kepler 442b. The lead ship, christened Tomorrow's Promise, bore the flags of every nation on Earth across its silver hull, a symbol of unity that had taken decades to achieve. Dr. Marcus Rivera stood on the command deck of Tomorrow's Promise. His reflection ghosted across the observation window that showed Earth slowly rotating below. In the 6 weeks since the Council's warning, he had barely slept, consumed by the need to understand whether his creation was truly dangerous or if the aliens were simply trying to suppress human advancement. His instruments still showed nothing wrong with the phase shift drive. But the nightmares had started 3 weeks ago, dreams where he watched reality crack like glass beneath his feet. Captain Jennifer Moss moved to stand beside him, her uniform crisp despite the long hours everyone had been working. The pre-flight checks are complete, Doctor. All 5 ships report green across the board. The crews are ready, the colonists are secured in their quarters, and Earth Control has given us final authorization for departure. She paused, her voice dropping lower. The Council delegation is still in orbit. They're requesting we delay the launch for 72 hours, while they complete their analysis of the dimensional integrity around Jupiter. Marcus's jaw tightened. The anomaly near Jupiter had everyone spooked. But Earth's best scientists had studied it for weeks and concluded it was unrelated to the phase shift drive. It was probably some natural quantum fluctuation, rare but not unprecedented. The Council was using it as an excuse to delay humanity's expansion into the stars, to keep Earth contained and dependent on their technology and guidance. Captain Moss, we've delayed long enough. 10,000 people have left their homes. said goodbye to their families and committed their lives to this mission. We're not backing down because some aliens with superior technology want to keep us in our place. Initiate the departure sequence. The captain hesitated for just a moment, then nodded sharply and returned to her command station. Throughout the fleet, similar conversations were taking place. Some voices urged caution, but they were drowned out by the momentum of hope and determination that had been building for months. On the Council observation vessel holding position near Mars, High Chancellor Draven watched the human colony ships power up their phase shift drives with a growing sense of horror. His senior scientist, a Vortan named Krell, whose 4 eyes could perceive wavelengths of light invisible to most species, studied the sensor readings with all 4 visual organs focused on the display. Chancellor, the dimensional stress patterns are worse than we calculated. The anomaly near Jupiter isn't natural. It's a resonance effect from their previous test flights. The small tiers have begun connecting to each other, forming a network of weak points in spacetime. When these ships activate their drives simultaneously, the energy discharge will be enormous. Can you predict the outcome? Draven asked, though he dreaded the answer. Krell's eyes shifted colors through the spectrum, a sign of deep distress in his species. The best-case scenario is that the ships complete their journey successfully, but leave behind dimensional rifts that will take centuries to stabilize. Worst case, the concentrated breach triggers a cascade failure. Multiple dimensions could begin bleeding into each other. The affected region of space would become uninhabitable, possibly for millions of years. Contact the human ships again. Make them understand we've tried 17 times, Chancellor. They've stopped responding to our hails. On tomorrow's promise, the countdown reached its final minute. Marcus strapped himself into the observer's seat on the command deck, his hands gripping the armrests with white-knuckled intensity. Around the ship, the other 4 vessels of the New Horizon fleet aligned themselves in the predetermined formation. Pioneer's Dream, Horizon's Edge, New Earth, and Unity's Dawn. Each name represented humanity's aspirations, their refusal to remain bound to a single world. The phase shift generators began their warm-up cycle, and the familiar shimmer appeared around each ship's hull. Space itself seemed to ripple outward from the fleet, creating interference patterns that looked like oil on water. The effect was beautiful and mesmerizing, and completely misleading about the violence being done to the fabric of reality. Captain Moss's voice carried across the command deck with calm authority. All ships report ready for phase shift. Destination coordinates locked. Kepler 442b, 620 light-years. Estimated transit time 4.7 seconds. Phase shift in 10 seconds. Marcus closed his eyes and whispered a prayer to whatever might be listening. Let us be right. Let this work. Let humanity reach the stars. The 5 ships vanished simultaneously. For a moment, nothing seemed wrong. The departure was clean, the energy discharge was within expected parameters, and the Council's sensors registered successful phase transitions. Then reality began to scream. The dimensional barriers, weakened by weeks of accumulated damage, couldn't handle the simultaneous stress of 5 large vessels punching through. The small tiers that had been scattered across the solar system suddenly connected, forming a web of fractures that spread faster than light through normal space. The anomaly near Jupiter exploded outward, growing from 10 meters to 10 kilometers in seconds. On Earth, every gravitational sensor went haywire. Seismographs detected vibrations that came from no earthly source. Radio telescopes picked up signals in frequencies that shouldn't exist. And in the skies above every continent, people looked up to see the stars shimmer and distort as if viewed through heat waves. The New Horizon fleet materialized in the Kepler 442 system exactly on target. For 30 glorious seconds, the colonists celebrated. They had crossed 600 light-years in less than 5 seconds. They had arrived at humanity's first extrasolar colony. The dream was real. Then Pioneer's dream began to scream. The 3rd colony ship in the formation had materialized with 80% of its mass in normal space. The remaining 20% was still phased into the dimensional layer, stuck between realities in a transition that should have been instantaneous, but had somehow frozen halfway. The ship was being torn apart by forces that existed in 2 different universes. Simultaneously, Marcus watched in horror through the communication link as the Pioneer's dream twisted into impossible geometric shapes. Corridors bent at angles that couldn't exist in 3-dimensional space. Hull plating rippled like liquid while remaining solid. And through it all, he could hear the screams of 3,000 people trapped in a nightmare of broken physics. Captain Moss was already shouting orders. But what could they do? There was no manual for rescuing a ship caught between dimensions. The phase shift drive was designed for clean transitions, not surgical extractions from quantum superposition states. "This is Rivera," Marcus transmitted on the emergency channel, his voice cracking with desperation. "Pioneer's dream. Shut down all phase shift systems immediately. Try to complete the transition into normal space. We're analyzing your situation and we'll find a solution." The response came from Pioneer's dream's captain, David Zhang, and his voice carried a calm that spoke of a man who knew he was already dead but refused to panic. "Dr. Rivera, we've tried. The drive won't respond to shutdown commands. It's like something is holding us in the phase state. Our sensors are showing impossible readings. We're detecting matter that exists in states that shouldn't be possible. And the rift is growing. We're pulling more of the ship into the phase layer, not transitioning back out." Marcus pulled up the technical readouts, his mind racing through decades of theoretical physics and engineering knowledge. There had to be an answer. Some combination of field adjustments or power fluctuations that could force the transition to complete. But the more data he analyzed, the more he realized the terrible truth. The phase shift drive was never designed to handle partial transitions. It was an all-or-nothing system, and Pioneer's dream was caught in a state that his equations said was impossible. On the Council observation vessel, Krell was speaking rapidly to the Chancellor while working multiple control interfaces simultaneously. "The resonance pattern matches the Zethari records exactly. This is how their collapse began. One ship caught between dimensions, creating a permanent tear that began pulling in everything around it. We have perhaps 6 hours before this becomes irreversible. What can we do?" Draven demanded. Krell's eyes all focused on the Chancellor with an intensity that conveyed both determination and fear. "There is one possibility. The Zethari left behind a failsafe system before their extinction, a dimensional anchor station hidden in deep space. It was designed to stabilize catastrophic breaches, but using it requires precise calculations and cooperation between the trapped vessel and external forces. The humans would need to trust us completely and follow our instructions exactly. Then contact them immediately. And Krell, be persuasive. The fate of this entire region of space may depend on it." The message from the Council arrived on tomorrow's promise, tagged with maximum priority and encryption that suggested intelligence beyond human understanding. Marcus opened it with shaking hands and found himself looking at a detailed schematic of technology he had never seen before, accompanied by instructions in multiple languages and mathematical notations that transcended species barriers. The message was clear. The Council knew how to save Pioneer's dream, but it would require humanity to abandon the phase shift drive entirely and adopt the Council's dimensional anchor technology. It would mean accepting that their greatest achievement was also their greatest mistake. It would mean humility, cooperation, and trust in beings they had spent weeks viewing as jealous obstacles to human progress. Marcus read the proposal 3 times, checking the mathematics, verifying the physics, and looking for any sign of deception or manipulation. He found none. The solution was elegant and theoretically sound. It would work, but it would cost humanity its independence and pride. Captain Moss stood beside him, reading over his shoulder. "What do we do, Doctor? Those are 3,000 lives hanging in the balance. 3,000 people who trusted us to keep them safe." Marcus thought about the 6 years of work, the funding battles, the skeptics he'd proven wrong, and the moment of triumph when the Pathfinder had returned from Alpha Centauri. He thought about humanity's long history of making mistakes, learning from them and growing stronger. He thought about his nightmares where reality cracked beneath his feet. "Contact High Chancellor Draven," he said quietly. "Tell him we accept the Council's help. And Captain, prepare to transmit all our phase shift drive technical data to their scientists. If we're going to save those people, we need to start trusting someone other than ourselves." The rescue operation took 14 hours and required coordination between human and alien technologies in ways neither species had attempted before. The Council's ancient Zethari failsafe system, dormant for 5,000 years, activated and began projecting dimensional stabilization fields toward Pioneer's dream. Marcus and his team worked alongside Krell and the Council scientists, translating their different approaches to physics into a unified solution. The process was delicate and terrifying. They had to carefully manipulate the phase state of Pioneer's dream, nudging it millimeter by millimeter back toward full materialization in normal space. Every adjustment risked shattering the ship completely or pulling it entirely into the dimensional layer where it would be lost forever. Captain Zhang and his crew followed instructions with extraordinary discipline despite the horror surrounding them. The ship's interior had become a surreal nightmare where gravity fluctuated randomly, where walls sometimes became transparent to reveal impossible vistas of twisted space, and where time itself seemed negotiable. Several colonists had already died from exposure to quantum states that human biology was never meant to experience. But slowly, agonizingly, the Pioneer's dream began to solidify. The portions of the ship caught between dimensions phased back into reality, bringing with them scars that would never fully heal. Hull sections that had existed in two states simultaneously showed strange properties. Metal that was simultaneously steel and something else, something from the other dimension that human science had no name for. When the last portion of the ship materialized and the dimensional rift finally sealed, a cheer went up across both human and council vessels. They had done it. 3,000 lives had been saved through cooperation and trust, but the victory was bittersweet. 247 colonists had died during the partial phase state. The Pioneer's dream was permanently damaged, its hybrid state hull sections making it unsafe for the return journey or for use as a colony ship. And most importantly, humanity had learned a lesson written in blood and terror. Marcus stood once again at the observation window, watching as council vessels moved to escort the New Horizon fleet. Earth had agreed to a complete halt on phase shift drive usage, pending a joint research program with the Council. The colonial mission to Kepler 442b would continue, but using traditional slower-than-light drives that would take decades instead of seconds. The 4 intact colony ships would serve as generation ships, their passengers living and dying in transit, so their descendants could reach the destination. Captain Moss joined him at the window. "We failed," she said quietly. "All that work, all that hope, and we were just too proud to listen to warnings." "No," Marcus replied, his voice carrying hard-won wisdom. "We succeeded in the most important way possible. We learned that being smart isn't the same as being wise. We learned that some shortcuts have costs we can't afford to pay. And we learned that we're not alone in the universe. That cooperation and humility aren't weakness but strength." A communication alert chimed, and High Chancellor Draven's image appeared on the display. "Dr. Rivera, Captain Moss, I want to inform you that the Galactic Unity Council has voted to grant Earth full membership status. Effective immediately, your species has demonstrated something rare and valuable in the face of catastrophe. You admitted your mistakes, accepted help, and prioritized lives over pride. These are the qualities of a civilization worthy of standing among the galactic community." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. "Thank you, Chancellor. What happens now with the phase shift technology?" Draven's tendrils moved in patterns Marcus had learned meant thoughtful consideration. "The Council scientist will work with your team to understand why your approach to dimensional phasing was so unstable. The Zithari had similar problems, but they never achieved cooperation with other species. Perhaps together we can find a way to make dimensional travel safe. Or perhaps we will confirm it must never be used. Either way, humanity will be part of that discovery process. You have earned that right." In the weeks that followed, a strange thing happened in the Sol system. The dimensional anomalies began to stabilize, though they would never fully heal. The Council deployed monitoring stations throughout human space and began training human scientists in advanced dimensional physics. Dr. Marcus Rivera became the director of the Joint Human Council Research Initiative, working to develop safer FTL alternatives. The colonists aboard the New Horizon fleet settled into their new reality. They would not see Kepler 442b themselves, but their children or grandchildren would. The journey would take 60 years using conventional drives, but it would be safe. More importantly, humanity would make that journey as part of a galactic community, rather than as isolated pioneers risking everything on untested technology. On Earth, the phase shift drive became a symbol of both human ingenuity and human hubris. Schools taught about the Pioneer's Dream incident as a lesson in the importance of listening to those with more experience. Museums displayed components of the original Pathfinder alongside Zithari artifacts. showing the parallel development of similar technologies across thousands of years and light-years of separation. And in a hidden facility deep beneath Titan's surface, a single phase shift drive remained intact and operational, sealed behind locks that required both human and council authorization to open. It was kept not as a weapon or a tool but as a reminder. Sometimes the most dangerous thing humanity could do was succeed without understanding the full implications of their success. Marcus visited that facility once a year, standing before the machine that had nearly destroyed reality itself. He would think about the 247 colonists who died, about the 3,000 who nearly died, and about the billions who had been put at risk by human pride and impatience. But he also thought about what humanity had gained through that terrible experience. They had gained membership in the galactic community. They had gained access to technology and knowledge that would advance human civilization by centuries. They had gained allies and teachers, trading partners and friends. And most importantly, they had gained wisdom, learning that being the smartest species in the room meant nothing if you weren't also wise enough to listen to others. The stars still called to humanity, as they always had. But now humanity answered that call with open hands extended in friendship, rather than clenched fists demanding their way forward. The journey would be longer and harder than they had hoped, but it would be sustainable and safe. And perhaps that was the most human thing of all, to learn from mistakes, to adapt, to grow, and to keep reaching for the stars no matter how many times they stumbled along the way. In the end, the phase shift drive had given humanity something more valuable than fast travel. It had given them a place in the galaxy earned through courage, humility, and the willingness to put lives and wisdom ahead of pride and ambition. And that was a future worth any sacrifice.